My son-in-law posted a video on Instagram mocking me as a disgusting old man, hunched over, forgetful, ridiculous. I pretended not to see it, but wrote a comment from an anonymous account that made his face turn white as a sheet. I revealed the whole truth. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The driveway gravel crunched under my tires as I pulled in just past 11. Friday nights at Wells' family kitchen always ran long. The dinner crowd, the lingering couples over dessert, the staff cleanup. My lower back ached from standing most of the shift, and I'd eaten nothing but a dinner roll around 8. The house sat dark except for the porch light I'd left on that morning. I grabbed my keys from the ignition and made my way to the front door, fumbling briefly with the lock. Inside, the silence felt complete. Nelson and Lula were out somewhere, probably at one of those lounges downtown they liked. I dropped my jacket over the hall chair and kicked off my shoes without untying them, leaving them crooked on the mat. In the kitchen, I filled a glass with tap water and drank it standing at the sink. Through the window, I could see the neighbor's security light casting shadows across my backyard. 38 years I'd owned this house, paid it off in 25. My late wife Sarah had picked out the tile backsplash I was looking at. That was 15 years ago now. I carried the empty glass to the living room and settled into my leather armchair, the one Sarah always said looked like something from a detective's office. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. Just a quick check before bed. Messages from the restaurant manager, a few emails, nothing urgent. I opened Instagram out of habit, scrolling past food photos and vacation snapshots. Then I stopped. Nelson's post sat 3 down from the top. The thumbnail showed my living room. This room, the corner by the fireplace. I recognized the brass lamp, the bookshelf Sarah had insisted we build in. My thumb pressed play before my brain caught up. The video opened with Nelson walking in an exaggerated shuffle, his back hunched, one hand trembling theatrically. His voice came out pitched and quavering. "Oh no, where did I put my pills? What year is it?" He straightened suddenly, grinning at the camera. "That's Ruben checking what day it is. Every single morning." The camera panned across my living room as Nelson continued. "Welcome to the museum, folks. Everything here is from 1987. The disgusting old man won't update anything because he's stuck in the past, just like his brain." He picked up the remote control from my side table, the universal one I'd finally figured out how to program. "Look at this ancient technology. Buddy thinks he's a genius for working this thing." The view count sat at 2,000, posted 6 hours ago while I was expediting orders in a kitchen I'd built from nothing. 300 likes, dozens of comments with laughing emojis. I set the phone face down on the side table. My hands wanted to shake, but I held them steady. Outside, a car passed, its headlights sweeping across the ceiling. I stood and walked to the front window, looking out at the empty street. The Hendersons across the way had their television on. I could see the blue flicker through their curtains. This man lived in my house. I'd co-signed his car loan 2 years ago when the bank wouldn't approve him a loan. I'd bought groceries when they were short, given them the master bedroom because it had the attached bath, and Lula mentioned Nelson liked long showers. I returned to the chair and sat with my spine straight, hands flat on the armrests. The phone stayed face down. Whatever I did next needed to be right, not fast. Anger would make me sloppy. I'd seen enough failed businesses to know that heated decisions led to permanent mistakes. 45 minutes passed, maybe an hour. I heard the car pull up outside, heard their voices carrying across the lawn. Laughter. I stood smoothly and walked to the kitchen, filling the kettle at the sink. By the time their key turned in the lock, I had 2 mugs out and was measuring honey into mine. "Hey, Reuben, you still up?" Nelson's voice came from the entryway, cheerful and easy. I kept my tone level, almost bored. "Just making some tea. Long day at the restaurant." Lula appeared in the kitchen doorway, her jacket still on. She looked tired but relaxed. "How was the dinner rush?" "Steady. The usual Friday crowd." I stirred the honey, watching it dissolve. We grabbed food out. Nelson leaned against the counter, scrolling his phone with his thumb. "Didn't want to bother you for cooking." I glanced up at him, let myself smile slightly. "How considerate." Lula moved closer, studying my face. She had her mother's eyes, the same way of looking that suggested she could read thoughts. "You look tired, Dad. You should get some rest." "I will." I looked between them, taking in Nelson's relaxed posture, his easy grin. "You two have a good evening." Nelson's smile widened. "Great evening. Really great." Something in his tone. I turned back to my tea. I'm glad someone's having fun. "Don't stay up too late." Lula squeezed my shoulder briefly as she passed. "Good night." "Good night." Their bedroom door closed. I heard muffled conversation, then quiet. I finished my tea standing at the counter, rinsed the mug, placed it in the dish rack. The house settled around me with its familiar creaks. In my bedroom, I lay on top of the covers, still dressed. Sleep felt impossible. My mind worked through what I'd seen, what it meant. 30 years building that restaurant from a small cafe to a full dining establishment. Gave them a home when Nelson lost his apartment. This was respect now? Public mockery? No. Anger would be expected. Anger was what a foolish old man would bring. They'd apologize with practiced sincerity, promise to delete it, make me feel like I was overreacting. I needed something else, something that would make them wonder, make them worry, something cold. Around 3 a.m, I reached for my phone on the nightstand. I had an old Instagram account from years back, something a marketing consultant had convinced me to set up for the restaurant. We'd never used it. I couldn't even remember the password at first, had to reset it twice. The account was blank. No profile picture, no posts, no followers. Perfect. I navigated back to Nelson's video. The view count had climbed to 2,400. I scrolled through the comments. People I didn't know, laughing at me in my own house. I tapped the comment box and typed slowly with one finger. "I know what you did." My thumb hovered over the post button. 6 words. No explanation, no accusation, just enough to plant a seed. I pressed it and watched the comment appear at the bottom of the thread. I closed the app, set the phone aside, and finally felt my muscles relax. Let him find it. Let him wonder who knew, what they knew, how much they'd figured out. Let him spend his weekend looking over his shoulder. I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. The sleep that came after felt earned. I woke before dawn despite sleeping only a few hours. Old habits from restaurant ownership. My body didn't understand the concept of sleeping in. The house was silent except for the furnace cycling on. Through my bedroom window, the sky was turning that particular shade of gray that meant sunrise was still an hour off. I dressed in my usual clothes, khakis and a button-down, and made my way to the kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled as it worked. I pulled out the newspaper from the front porch, still wrapped in its plastic sleeve, and spread it across the kitchen table. Around 8, I heard movement from their bedroom. The bathroom door closed. Water ran. I turned to the sports section, reading about the Blazers' latest loss, without really absorbing any of it. Nelson appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed, which was unusual for a Saturday. His phone was in his hand, thumb moving across the screen. His face had less color than normal. I glanced up briefly. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Yeah, fine. You?" His eyes stayed on his phone. Like a rock. I was exhausted after the restaurant. I folded the sports section and reached for the local news. "Coffee's fresh if you want some." He moved to the counter, still staring at his screen. His hand shook slightly as he poured, spilling a few drops on the granite. He grabbed a paper towel and wiped it quickly. Lula emerged a few minutes later, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked from Nelson to me, her expression shifting to something concerned. "Nelson, you okay? You look pale." "I'm fine." His voice came out too quick. "Just checking messages." I kept my tone casual, conversational. "Anything interesting online these days?" "No." He finally looked up, meeting my eyes for half a second. "Nothing, just the usual." The morning stretched out with uncomfortable quiet. Nelson kept checking his phone every few minutes. At one point, Lula put her hand on his arm. "You've checked that phone 50 times today. What's going on?" "Work stuff. You know how it is." "You don't have work. You're a content creator." His jaw tightened. "Exactly. Content needs constant monitoring." "This isn't normal monitoring." Lula's voice dropped lower. "Did something happen?" I said it's nothing. "Drop it." I stood and carried my coffee mug to the sink, rinsing it carefully. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Henderson putting out her garbage cans. Normal Saturday morning, completely routine. I spent the afternoon doing yard work, trimming the hedges out front, pulling a few weeds from the flower bed Sarah had planted. The Mitchells from next door waved as they left for somewhere. I waved back, just another Saturday in Laurelhurst. Inside, I could see Nelson through the living room window, pacing while he talked on his phone. Lula sat on the couch with her laptop. Everything appeared normal from the outside. By Sunday morning, I had a plan. I mentioned over breakfast that I needed to go to the restaurant for a few hours. Lula looked up from her toast. On Sunday? Don't you have managers for that? Some paperwork I prefer to handle myself. Quarterly reviews. I picked up my keys from the counter hook. I'll be back for dinner. Any requests? Nelson barely glanced my way. Have fun with that. We can figure something out, Lula said. Don't worry about us. The drive downtown took 15 minutes. Wells' family kitchen sat on a corner in the Pearl District, the windows dark since we were closed Sundays. I parked in my spot around back and let myself in through the employee entrance. Diane Foster was already in my office when I arrived. She'd been my bookkeeper for 12 years, ever since her previous accounting firm downsized. She looked up from the computer screen, her reading glasses perched on her nose. Thank you for coming in on your day off. You sounded serious on the phone yesterday. She gestured at the chair across from my desk. What's this about? I sat down and folded my hands. I need you to check every transaction Lula touched. Every single one. Diane's expression shifted from curious to concerned. Reuben, are you sure you want to know? I'm certain. Start with the last 2 years. If I find something, document everything. Print everything. Tell no one. She turned back to the computer and opened our accounting software. I pulled my chair around beside hers so I could see the screen. The office felt smaller with both of us crowded around the desk. For the next several hours, we worked through transaction records. Diane's finger traced across the screen, pausing occasionally. This one, she'd say. Then 5 minutes later, this one too. A pattern emerged. Payments to something called Apex Marketing Solutions, marked as consulting fees. Cash withdrawals on Lula's card for business supplies that never appeared in inventory. Transfers that didn't match any vendor in our system. Diane printed each suspicious transaction. The stack of papers on my desk grew steadily thicker. Around 6 in the evening, she leaned back and removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Reuben, this company, Apex Marketing Solutions? It doesn't exist. I checked the business registry. Nothing. How much? She looked at her notepad where she'd been keeping a running total. 47,000 so far. Maybe more if I keep looking. I sat very still, absorbing the number. Not an accidental zero added to an invoice. Not a confused transaction. Systematic. Organized. Deliberate. That's enough. I reached across and closed the accounting software. Lock these files. Password protect them. What are you going to do? What I should have done years ago. Pay attention. After Diane left, I sat alone in the office with the printed evidence spread across my desk. The numbers didn't lie. $47,000. Money I'd earned through early mornings and late nights, through burned fingers and aching feet, through 20-hour days when we first opened. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts to Lula's name. My finger hovered over the call button. Then I set the phone down. Not yet. Not while I was still figuring out the full picture. I gathered the printouts, squared the edges, and locked them in my desk drawer. The office lights went off with a click. I walked through the dark restaurant to the back door, checking that it locked behind me. In my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel, engine off. The parking lot was empty except for a delivery truck parked across the street. Above me, the sky had turned deep purple with approaching night. The video hadn't been just cruelty. It had been contempt. The kind of contempt that came from feeling superior to someone, from thinking they were too stupid to notice. They'd mocked me while stealing from me. They'd laughed while robbing me blind. I started the engine and drove home through the quiet streets. Monday morning, I woke before Nelson and Lula stirred. I made my coffee, read the news, waited until 8 o'clock. Then I took my phone to the bedroom and closed the door. The law firm's website had listed their phone number at the top. I dialed and waited through 2 rings. Huang & Associates, how may I help you? I need to schedule a consultation with Mr. Huang. Of course. May I ask the nature of the consultation? Asset protection and family law matters. I have Tuesday at 10. Does that work for you? Perfect. Reuben Wells, Wells. We'll see you then, Mr. Wells. I ended the call and deleted it from my recent list. Then I opened my calendar app and added the appointment under a simple note. Dentist. Let them see it if they looked. Let them think nothing was happening. I opened the bedroom door and returned to the kitchen where Nelson sat at the table with his phone. He looked up briefly, his expression guarded. Morning, I said, pouring another cup of coffee. Looks like good weather today. He nodded and went back to his screen. I picked up the newspaper and turned to the business section, reading about quarterly earnings and market trends, while the house settled into its usual Monday morning routine. Everything appeared completely normal. Monday crawled by with deliberate normalcy. I kept to my routine at the restaurant, inventory checks, staff meetings, reviewing next week's reservations. When I came home that evening, Nelson barely looked up from his laptop. Lula asked how my day went. I said fine. Everything felt staged, a play where only I knew the real script. Tuesday morning, I woke before the alarm. The house was silent, that particular quiet of early hours when even the walls seemed to hold their breath. I dressed carefully, pressed khakis, a button-down shirt in navy blue, no tie. Business serious, not funeral serious. In my bedroom, I spread the documents across my desk. Diane's audit printouts, bank statements with transactions highlighted in yellow, screenshots of the Instagram video, saved to my phone, then printed. I organized everything into a leather portfolio, the one Sarah bought me when we opened the restaurant. Some things deserved proper presentation. Downstairs, Nelson sat at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal, scrolling through his phone with his free hand. Lula was making coffee, still wearing her bathrobe. I poured myself a quick cup and stood by the counter. I have a meeting downtown this morning. Lula glanced over her shoulder. What meeting? Everything okay? Tax planning. The accountant wants to review some things before next season. I kept my tone flat, bored even. Nothing exciting. Nelson didn't look up. Sounds thrilling. Most responsible things are. I rinsed my cup and set it in the sink. I'll be back this afternoon. Don't let them sell you some complicated scheme, Dad. Lula turned back to her coffee. Those people always try to overcomplicate things. I picked up my briefcase and keys. I never agree to anything I don't fully understand. The drive downtown took 15 minutes through morning traffic. Victor Huang's office occupied the 7th floor of a steel and glass building in the Pearl District. The elevator was empty except for me and a woman in a business suit who got off on the 5th floor. I watched the numbers climb, felt my chest tighten slightly. This was different from investigating. This was acting. The reception area had modern furniture, clean lines, legal journals arranged on a glass coffee table. Everything spoke of competence without ostentation. The receptionist smiled professionally. Mr. Wells? Mr. Huang will see you now. The conference room had windows overlooking the city, Mount Hood visible in the distance. Victor Huang was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with silver threading through his black hair. His handshake was firm, his eyes direct. Mr. Wells? Thank you for coming in. He gestured to the chairs. Please sit. I opened my portfolio and slid the papers across the polished table. I need to show you some things. Victor put on reading glasses and began examining each document methodically. He'd pause occasionally, make a note on his legal pad, then continue. I waited, watching his face for reactions. He gave away nothing until he finished. Walk me through what happened. Start with the video. Friday evening. I found it by accident while checking Instagram. I kept my voice level, factual. He filmed it in my living room, posted it while I was working. And your response was to leave an anonymous comment? I wanted to see his reaction, to see if there was something more to hide. And was there? Victor looked up from the papers. I pushed the audit results toward him. $47,000 worth of something. He studied Diane's spreadsheet in silence for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. Technically, your daughter had authorized access to these accounts. So she can just steal from me? Not steal, misappropriate. Different legal standards, same outcome. He set the pages down. Can we prove it? With this evidence, yes. Will it be pleasant? No. Family law never is. I don't need pleasant. I need effective. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying me. They've lived in your house how long? 8 months, rent-free. Then they have tenancy rights. You can't simply evict them without cause. Stealing $47,000 isn't cause? It is. But you need to prove it first through legal channels. That takes time. He stood and walked to the whiteboard mounted on the wall. The faster option is making them want to leave. Legally, quietly, voluntarily. How? Victor drew a simple diagram, my assets in the center, then a box around them. Have you heard of a revocable living trust? Vaguely, estate planning tool. More than that. It's a shield. He tapped the diagram. You transfer assets into the trust. You maintain complete control during your lifetime. But legally, they're no longer in your personal name. Meaning? Meaning they can't inherit what you don't personally own. They can't claim interest in trust assets. And if they're planning to argue, they deserve control of your estate. He left the sentence unfinished. I understood immediately. How long does this take? I can draft the documents by Thursday. Funding the trust, actually transferring the assets, takes another few days. By next week, everything's protected. What's the first step? Victor returned to his seat and pulled out a fresh legal pad. Revoke her account access. Today. Won't that alert them? Frame it as routine financial housekeeping. Bank security requirements. Tax optimization. Any of those. He wrote something down. If they're innocent, they'll accept it. If they're guilty, they'll panic quietly. Either way, we learn something. Exactly. Victor looked up. And Reuben? Record everything from now on. Oregon is a one-party consent state. You don't need their permission. We spent another 30 minutes discussing details. He'd have trust documents ready for review by Friday. I should change all passwords immediately, document every interaction, keep detailed records. If they didn't leave voluntarily, we'd have everything ready for formal eviction proceedings, backed by fraud evidence. When I stood to leave, Victor shook my hand again. One more thing. Keep the original audit documents somewhere secure. Make copies. One set here, one somewhere safe that they can't access. What about involving the police? Not yet. We build the complete case first. Then we decide how to use it. I drove home through midday traffic, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead. First, the passwords. Then dinner tonight, when I'd make the announcement. Let them wonder. Let them test the locks and find everything sealed. Back home, their car was gone. Perfect. I went straight to my office and opened my laptop. Bank websites first. Personal checking, savings, the business accounts for the restaurant. Each password change felt like closing a door. 45 minutes later, I had a list of new passwords locked in my desk drawer. By evening, I'd prepared dinner. Nothing fancy, just roasted chicken and vegetables. I set the table deliberately. 3 places. When I heard their car in the driveway, I was in the kitchen stirring gravy, the picture of domestic routine. Dinner in 20 minutes, I called out when they came in. Can you both join me? It wasn't quite a request. We sat at the dining room table, plates full, the evening light slanting through the windows. For several minutes we ate in normal quiet, forks scraping plates, the small sounds of a meal shared by people who'd done this countless times before. I set my fork down midway through, leaned back slightly in my chair. I met with my financial advisor today. She had some interesting suggestions. Lula looked up. Oh, what about? Security mostly. Apparently I've been too casual with account access and passwords. I kept my tone conversational, almost apologetic. Banks are cracking down these days. Nelson nodded, still chewing. That's smart. Identity theft is everywhere. Exactly. I picked up my water glass, took a sip. So I've updated everything. Changed all my passwords, tightened access controls. Lula, you won't need to worry about my accounts anymore. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Wait, what? But I was helping you? And I appreciate that. But I've got it handled now. I resumed eating as if the matter was settled. This seems really sudden, Dad. Her voice had an edge. Is something wrong? Nothing's wrong. Just routine maintenance. But what if you need help with something? Nelson reached over and touched her arm. Lula, he's 63, not 93. He can manage his own accounts. He looked at me, his expression understanding, supportive even. Makes perfect sense, actually. My dad does the same thing every few years. Thank you, Nelson. That's exactly right. Lula set her fork down completely. I just thought I was being helpful. You were. Now you don't have to be. I met her eyes steadily. Consider it one less thing to worry about. The rest of dinner passed with stilted conversation about nothing important. When they excused themselves to their room, I cleared the table slowly, listening to their muffled voices through the wall. I couldn't make out words, but I didn't need to. I could imagine the conversation perfectly. Her confusion, his reassurance, both of them probably already testing whether she could still access anything. She couldn't. Every door was locked. Wednesday unfolded with careful observation. I went to the restaurant as usual, worked through inventory and payroll, but part of my mind stayed home. Were they trying the accounts? Finding the walls I'd built? By the time I returned that evening, the atmosphere had shifted. Nothing obvious. They still said hello, still moved through the house with familiar ease, but something underneath had changed. The comfort was gone. Thursday morning, my phone rang while I was reviewing prep lists in the restaurant kitchen. Diane's name on the screen. I finished the complete review. You need to see this. I met her in my office 20 minutes later. The door closed, window blinds drawn. She stood when I entered, her face serious in a way that made my stomach tighten. Sit down, Reuben. That bad? She slid a spreadsheet across my desk. It's worse. $70,300 total. The number hung in the air between us. I picked up the paper, scanned the columns. How? The marketing company payments we found initially, plus systematic cash withdrawals, on the emergency card you gave her. Diane sat down across from me. I went back further. It's been going on for 2 years, almost to the day they moved in. 2 years. I set the paper down carefully. Steady and systematic. This wasn't impulsive, Reuben. This was planned. She opened a folder and spread out more documents. Look at the pattern. Withdrawals every 2 weeks, always just under reporting thresholds. Payments to Apex Marketing Solutions monthly like clockwork. Even the amounts varied slightly. Nothing so consistent it would trigger automatic fraud detection. I studied the evidence laid out before me. Each entry was another small cut, another moment of theft while I worked or slept or trusted. Make 3 copies. Perfect copies. Already done. 1 for you, 1 secured off-site, 1 for your attorney. Thank you, Diane. I looked up at her. Not just for this, for everything. I've worked for you 12 years. You've always been fair, always been honest. She closed the folder. Whatever you're planning to do about this, I'm here. By early afternoon, I was back in Victor's office building, riding the elevator up with the expanded evidence folder in my briefcase. This time we met in his personal office, smaller and more efficient than the conference room. He opened the folder, began reading. After the second page, he let out a low whistle. This changes everything. This is serious criminal fraud. What are my options? Civil suit for restitution, criminal charges, or both? Victor set the papers aside and looked at me directly. Civil is faster, lower burden of proof, but recovery isn't guaranteed. Criminal is slower, higher stakes, but the accountability is real. Prison time, real. Can we do both? We can. He paused. But are you ready for that level of confrontation with your daughter? I thought about the video, about 2 years of systematic theft, about them living in my house, eating my food, planning to take more. She made her choice. I'm making mine. Victor nodded slowly. Then we proceed on both tracks. I'll continue with the trust documents. That protects your assets going forward. Simultaneously, we compile everything for the district attorney. Let them decide on criminal charges. When can we move? Trust documents are ready for your review tomorrow. The criminal complaint will take another week to prepare properly. He made notes on his pad. In the meantime, keep documenting. Keep recording, if possible. The more evidence of ongoing intent, the stronger both cases become. I drove home as the afternoon light turned golden. In my study, I reviewed my notes, thought through the next steps. My phone buzzed. The family group chat. Nelson's name appeared first. Hey, Reuben, maybe we should talk about the future. A second message followed. You're 63. Might be time to think about transitioning things to us. I stared at the screen. The audacity was almost breathtaking. Stealing for 2 years and now asking for control of what remained. Lula's message appeared below. Dad, Nelson has some good ideas about the restaurant. We could really help. I set the phone down, walked to the window, looked out at the street where a neighbor was walking their dog, where life continued in its ordinary way, picked up the phone again, reread the messages. 15 minutes passed before I typed my response. Let them wait. Let them feel the silence. Let's discuss this weekend. Saturday afternoon work? Nelson's reply came fast. Perfect. We'll be ready. I murmured to the empty room. So will I. That night, lying in bed with the house quiet around me, I thought about Saturday. They'd be preparing their pitch, their arguments for why they should take over, practicing their reasonable voices, their concerned faces. They had no idea I'd already seen behind the mask. No idea the evidence was documented, copied, secured. No idea that tomorrow I'd sign documents, placing everything beyond their reach. Let them prepare. Let them hope. The trap was already built. They just hadn't felt it close yet. Friday morning arrived with clear skies and sharp purpose. I drove downtown to Victor's office, the trust documents waiting in his conference room like a treaty ready for signing. The notary was already there when I arrived, a professional woman in her 50s, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck. Mr. Wells, Victor gestured to the chair, everything's prepared. The papers spread across the table told a simple story in legal language. The Wells Family Trust, naming me as trustee with complete control during my lifetime, and Portland Food Security Fund as beneficiary after my death. Not a word about Lula, not a mention of Nelson. Sign each page where marked, Victor said, sliding a pen across the polished wood. I read every line. Not performing now, actually reading. When I reached the beneficiary clause, I paused, making sure it helps people who actually need it. Noble choice, and absolutely airtight legally. Victor watched me sign, R. Wells, R. Wells, R. Wells. The notary added her stamp with practiced efficiency, the sound of it final and official. As of now, Victor said as he gathered the documents into a folder, legally you don't personally own these assets. The trust does. I drove home with a copy in my briefcase, feeling the weight of doors closing behind me. Everything protected. Everything beyond their reach. Time for the next phase. That afternoon, I walked into the kitchen and stopped mid-stride. Lula was there making coffee, and I let my face go blank, puzzled. Dad? She set down the mug. You okay? I came in here for... I touched my forehead. What did I need? She approached slowly, concern written across her features, or a good imitation of it. What do you need? I can help. Water. Yes. I looked around the kitchen as if seeing it for the first time. The glasses are... Where do we keep glasses? Same place they've always been. She opened the cabinet, handed me one. Are you feeling all right? Just tired. I filled the glass, drank slowly, shuffled out of the room. Behind me, I heard her pull out her phone. Throughout the afternoon, I sprinkled in small moments of confusion. Asked Lula what day it was. Couldn't find my phone. It was in my pocket. Repeated a question about the restaurant that I'd asked 10 minutes earlier. Each time, I watched her watch me. Each time, I saw something shift in her expression. Not worry. Calculation. After dinner, they retreated to their bedroom. I positioned myself in the hallway, ear close to their door. The wood was thin, old house construction. Their voices came through muffled but excited. Getting worse, Nelson's voice. Sooner than we thought, Lula replied. Doctor evaluation? Conservatorship. I stepped back quietly, returned to my room. They weren't concerned family members. They were strategists adjusting their timeline. Perfect. Saturday morning, I escalated. At breakfast, I looked at Lula with genuine confusion on my face. Wait, the restaurant is closed today? No, Dad, you're open today. Closed Sundays, remember? Right, Sundays. I nodded slowly, but let uncertainty linger in my eyes. Have I always been closed Sundays? She exchanged a glance with Nelson. He was barely suppressing a smile. As long as I've known you, she said gently. 10 minutes later, after finishing my toast, I asked again, So we're closed today? Her pen paused over her phone screen. She was taking notes now, documenting, building her case while I built mine. That afternoon, she sat beside me on the couch and took my hand. Dad, I've been thinking, maybe we should schedule a checkup, just routine. Do I need one? I feel fine. You've been forgetting little things. It's probably nothing, but let's be sure. Her voice was soft, concerned. almost convincing. Forgetting things? Like what? Like this morning. The restaurant schedule you asked 3 times. I let worry cross my face. I did? I don't remember that. That's exactly why we should go, just to be safe. All right, if you think it's best. I squeezed her hand, played the vulnerable father. Inside, I was marking every word, every false note of concern. My phone buzzed later that afternoon. Text from Victor. Trust fully funded. All transfers complete. You're protected. I deleted the message immediately and felt something settle in my chest. The house, the restaurant, the accounts. All of it now in the trust. Untouchable. Let them plot. Let them scheme. They were fighting over something that no longer existed. Sunday morning, I carried a folder of papers to the dining table. Just reviewing some restaurant paperwork, I said to no one in particular. I set it down while I went to get coffee. Documents clearly visible. Victor Huang's letterhead. The word trust prominent on the top page. Going to take a shower, I announced, and went upstairs. But I stopped at the top, positioned where I could see the dining room reflected in the hallway mirror. 5 minutes. That's how long Nelson lasted. I watched him glance toward the stairs, then move to the table. He opened the folder quickly, his face going pale as he read. His phone came out. Flash off. Quick photographs of each page. He closed the folder, but put it back wrong. Different page on top. Amateur. He went straight to their bedroom and closed the door. I showered, dressed, came back downstairs. The folder sat exactly where I'd left it, exactly as Nelson had replaced it. I picked it up casually and returned it to my study. Their bedroom door stayed closed for over an hour. When it finally opened, they emerged with strained smiles and dead eyes. Sunday dinner was a performance. Them pretending everything was normal, me pretending to be confused, all of us lying to each other across the table. Did you have a nice day, Dad? Lula asked, her voice too bright. Did I? I think so. What did I do today? Nelson jumped in quickly. You were here. Reading, mostly. Was I? I let my brow furrow. My memory feels foggy. Maybe you should get more rest tonight, Lula said, shooting a glance at Nelson. That night, lying in bed, I reviewed my position like a general surveying a battlefield. Trust, complete. Evidence of theft, documented. Their attempt to portray me as incompetent, recorded through their own words and actions. They were panicking, making mistakes, and I was there to catch every one. Tomorrow, they'd make their move. I could feel it coming like a storm on the horizon. I fell asleep easily, knowing Monday would bring their desperation into the open where I could see it clearly and capture it permanently. Monday morning, I woke before dawn and went straight to my dresser. The small voice recorder sat in the top drawer, pocket-sized, powerful, exactly what I needed. I pressed record and spoke softly. Testing, Monday morning. The playback was crystal clear. I slid it into my shirt pocket and clipped it inside, then practiced normal movements. Sitting, standing, reaching. The device stayed invisible, silent. Oregon's one-party consent law meant I didn't need their permission to record. Every word they said to me would be evidence. Downstairs, I started coffee and waited. They emerged around 8, later than usual. Dark circles under their eyes. They'd been up late planning. Breakfast was quiet, charged. Lula kept glancing at Nelson. Finally, he stood. I need to run some errands. Be back later. The door closed behind him, giving Lula space to work on me alone. How transparent they'd become. She found me in the living room 20 minutes later, newspaper in my lap, sat beside me on the couch, leaned forward with her hands clasped, the posture of sincerity. Dad, can we talk? Really talk? I set the newspaper aside, gave her my attention. The recorder in my pocket was already running. I'm worried about you. She took my hand, her voice soft. You've been forgetting things, seeming confused. Nelson and I just want to help. I feel fine, honey. I know you do. But what if something happens? What if you need help and can't ask for it? She reached for the folder on the coffee table, already prepared, already planned. I had a lawyer draw up a power of attorney, just in case. The papers she slid across to me were multiple pages, stapled. General power of attorney, the header read. I picked them up, appeared to read slowly while actually reading every word. Bank accounts, medical decisions, property sales, comprehensive control of everything. This gives you control of my bank accounts, I said quietly. Only if you need me to manage them. Otherwise, everything stays the same. I flipped through the pages. And medical decisions? Just if you're unable to make them yourself. It's protective, Dad. That's why it should be family. Someone you trust. I set the papers down carefully on the side table. Didn't hand them back. This is a big decision, Lula. Let me think about it. Her face tightened almost imperceptibly. But Dad, what if something happens suddenly? The doctor appointment is next week. What if they find something? Then we'll deal with it when it happens. Having this in place now would give us peace of mind. Whose peace of mind? I met her eyes. Mine or yours? She blinked, caught off guard. All of ours. We're family. Exactly. Family. Which is why I need to be sure about this. I picked up my newspaper again. Sure about what's right for everyone? Sure about what? Trusting your own daughter? Sure about what's right for everyone? I repeated, not looking at her. She stood abruptly, frustrated, but trying to hide it. Just think about it. Please. After she retreated to the bedroom, I transferred the audio file to my laptop, then to a cloud drive with encrypted password. Then I drove to Victor's office, telling them I was going to the restaurant. Victor listened to the recording in silence, his face growing more serious with each passing minute. This is attempted exploitation of perceived incompetence, he said when it finished. Combined with evidence of theft, this creates a clear pattern of elder abuse. Is that criminal? Very much so. Keep recording. More evidence only strengthens your position. I returned home before they noticed I'd been gone long. Tuesday morning, I checked Instagram while drinking my coffee. A routine now, monitoring what Nelson was broadcasting to the world. His story appeared at the top of my feed. The image showed him looking tired, running his hand through his hair. Text overlay. The hardest part of caring for an aging relative is watching them slip away. Hashtags. Elder care. Watch family first. Caregiver. Memory loss. The next slide was a generic stock photo of elderly hands. Some days he doesn't remember what he had for breakfast. We just smile and remind him. What else can we do? The comments rolled in. You're so patient. This must be so hard. You're wonderful for taking care of him. I screenshot every slide, every comment, opened my photos, and created an album. Evidence, Nelson, SM. Then I scrolled back through his recent posts, realizing this wasn't new. He'd been building this narrative for over a week. Subtle mentions of family challenges, posts about being more caregiver than son-in-law, creating a public record. If they pursued conservatorship, they'd have proof of my decline. Witnesses who'd seen his concerned posts. A documented timeline of my supposed incompetence. I saved everything. That afternoon, I drove to the restaurant and called Diane and my manager into the office. I need you both to write statements. Date them, sign them. About my mental competence, my business decisions, anything you've observed. Diane understood immediately. You're building a defense. I'm documenting reality. I handed them each a notepad. Be specific. Dates, observations, conversations. When they finished, we drove to the bank next door. The notary stamped both statements, logged them in her book, charged me $5. Official, witnessed, dated evidence that I was sharp, competent, and making sound decisions. I returned home around 6. Nelson and Lula were in the living room, clearly waiting. I set down my keys deliberately and looked at them both. We need to talk. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. We're going to see a notary. They exchanged glances, hopeful, nervous, confused all at once. A notary? Lula's voice was careful. For what? I've made some decisions about my affairs. I want everything official. What kind of decisions? Nelson leaned forward. You'll find out tomorrow. Be ready to leave by 8:45. Dad, can't you tell us what this is about? Lula stood, took a step toward me. Tomorrow. Everything will be clear tomorrow. I turned toward my bedroom. 9 o'clock. Don't be late. That evening passed in tense silence. They didn't know if the notary visit meant good news or bad for them. I didn't elaborate, went to my room early. From my bedroom, I called Victor. Tomorrow. It's time. The notary is actually my office, he confirmed. We'll do formal notice of the trust and revocation of all previous authorizations. They think they're getting power of attorney. They're getting notice that they have no power at all. And Reuben? He paused. I'll have security present, just in case. I lay back on my bed, hands behind my head, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow they'd walk into that office expecting victory. They'd find out instead that every door was locked, every path was blocked, every assumption was wrong. The trap was built. Tomorrow it would spring. Wednesday morning arrived with clear skies and the weight of revelation. At 8:45, I loaded Nelson and Lula into my car, taking the driver's seat while they settled in back like uncertain passengers. The positioning felt appropriate. "Where exactly are we going?" Lula asked as I pulled out of the driveway. "Victor Huang's office, downtown." Nelson leaned forward. "Your attorney? I thought this was just a notary." "Victor arranged the notary. Everything needs to be official." I kept my eyes on the road, navigating familiar streets toward the Pearl District. The parking garage was nearly full. We rode the elevator in silence, just the mechanical hum and the counting floor numbers. 7. The doors opened to Victor's reception area. His assistant greeted us with professional warmth. "Mr. Huang is expecting you. Conference room B down the hall." Victor stood when we entered, gesturing to the chairs across from him. A notary sat to his right, stamp and logbook ready. Another person, a paralegal perhaps, occupied a chair against the wall. The table held neat stacks of documents. "Good morning. Please, everyone sit." I took my seat confidently. Nelson and Lula sat together, united front already crumbling as they registered the formal atmosphere. Victor slid a document across the polished wood. "We're here to formalize the Wells Family Trust and make official declarations." I picked up the pen he offered, read the indicated lines aloud for the record. "I, Reuben Wells, hereby transfer all personal assets into the Wells Family Trust, effective immediately." My signature followed, clear, deliberate. The notary's stamp made 3 solid thumps across the pages. "All my assets are now in this trust," I said, looking directly at Nelson and Lula. "The restaurant, the house, bank accounts, everything." Lula found her voice first. "What does that mean?" "It means after I die, it all goes to Portland Food Security Fund, a charitable organization that actually helps people." I let that settle. "I'm also formally revoking any previous promises or understandings about inheritance." Nelson's face had gone pale. "You're leaving everything to charity?" "That's correct." I leaned back, the document signed and sealed. "Now there's something else we need to discuss. I commissioned a complete audit of the restaurant finances." "Why would you do that?" Lula's voice had risen half an octave. "Because I wanted to understand where money was going." I nodded to Victor, who produced a thick folder. $70,300. Missing. Over 2 years. The color drained from both their faces. Diane found payments to a fake marketing company. Your company, Nelson. Apex Marketing Solutions doesn't exist. She also found systematic cash withdrawals on the emergency card. I kept my tone conversational, almost pleasant. All documented, all traceable. "There must be some accounting error," Nelson managed. "No error. We have the bank records. The shell company registration uses your email address." I slid copies of the evidence across the table. "We even have the Secretary of State's search showing no such business exists." "Dad, I can explain," Lula started. "Don't." The single word stopped her. Diane triple-checked. Victor verified. "This is systematic theft." Nelson stood abruptly. "I don't have to sit here and be accused." Victor's voice cut through calm and firm. "Actually, Mr. Nelson, you do. Please sit down." The security guard at the door, I hadn't mentioned him explicitly, but he'd been there the whole time, shifted his weight slightly. Nelson noticed and sat. "We're your family," Lula tried, her voice breaking. "Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't mock. Family doesn't plot." I gathered my copies of the documents. "We're done here. The trust is complete. The evidence is documented. You've been formally notified." The elevator ride down was silent except for Lula's quiet crying. I drove home the same way we'd come, through midday traffic that seemed oblivious, to the small war that had just concluded. "How could you do this?" Lula finally asked as we pulled into the driveway. "Cut out your own daughter." "How could you steal from me while living in my house?" Nelson's voice was tight. "This is about that video, isn't it? This is about who you really are, both of you." We entered the house and immediately scattered, me to my study, them to their bedroom. Doors closed throughout the house like sequential detonations. The afternoon passed in cold silence, everyone in separate corners. Around 4, I heard their voices pick up through the baby monitor app I'd installed in their room days ago. I put in my earbuds and listened. He's bluffing. Nelson's voice came through clear. If he had real proof, we'd already be arrested. What do we do? Lula sounded desperate. We file with Adult Protective Services. Tomorrow morning, first thing. On what grounds? Dementia, memory loss, dangerous to himself. Nelson's voice gained confidence as he explained. We emphasize last week's confusion. My Instagram posts establish a timeline of decline. If APS investigates and assigns a conservator, we can challenge everything he signed today. Will that work? It's our only shot. Once he's declared incompetent, every document he signed becomes questionable. I stopped the recording and saved the file. Wednesday evening, APS plan. Then I called Victor and left a message. They're going to APS tomorrow. Be ready. I lay in bed that night, feeling no anger, no satisfaction, just cold certainty. They'd handed me exactly what I needed. Tomorrow they'd make their move, and I'd be 3 steps ahead, waiting. Thursday morning, I watched from my bedroom window as Nelson left the house with unusual purpose. 8:30. No explanation to me, just a brief word to Lula that I couldn't hear. I knew exactly where he was going. I called Victor immediately. He just left, heading to Adult Protective Services, I'd wager. Let him file. We're ready with counter-documentation. His voice was calm, assured. You'll get notification within 48 hours. I'll be ready. I spent the morning at the restaurant, maintaining normalcy. Diane met me in the office. Everything documented and backed up? She patted the locked file cabinet. 3 copies, completely secure. By afternoon, my phone chimed with an automated message. An investigation has been opened regarding your welfare. An investigator will visit within 48 hours. Perfect. Thursday evening, Nelson returned, looking smugly satisfied. At dinner, he made small talk and watched me carefully, looking for signs of worry. He found none. I ate slowly, asked about their day, commented on the weather, gave him nothing. That night, I organized my evidence on the desk. Financial records, trust documents, audit results, and my phone with its recordings. Everything labeled, everything accessible. I set out my medications, my balanced checkbook, my appointment calendar. Then I went to bed early and slept soundly. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. The woman who stood there was professional, late 50s, with kind eyes and a clipboard. Mr. Wells, I'm Gloria Martinez from Oregon Adult Protective Services. I've been expecting someone. I shook her hand firmly. Please come in. Her eyebrows rose slightly. You were expecting us? I overheard the plan to file a complaint. My son-in-law and daughter. I gestured toward the living room. I'll explain everything. Nelson and Lula emerged from their bedroom as Gloria and I settled into chairs. They hovered in the hallway, watching. Can we speak privately? Gloria asked. The living room is fine, they can hear. She began with standard questions. Can you tell me today's date? Friday, August 29th, 2025. Who is the current president? Donald Trump, inaugurated this past January. What did you have for breakfast? Oatmeal with blueberries, coffee black, orange juice. I made it myself at 7:15 this morning. She asked me to solve simple math. 17 times 6. 102. Asked about current events. I discussed recent news accurately, gave details. Gloria made notes, and I could see her assessment forming. Then I said, May I show you why this complaint was filed? Please do. I retrieved the folder from my desk. 2 weeks ago, I discovered $70,000 missing from my business accounts. Stolen. By my son-in-law. I slid the audit across to her. Here's the complete documentation. Her professional mask shifted as she studied the numbers. This is substantial fraud. Yes. 3 days after I confronted them, my daughter tried to get me to sign power of attorney. I showed her the document. Complete financial control. After I refused, this APS complaint was filed. Mr. Wells, these are serious allegations. I have more. I pulled out my phone. Oregon is a one-party consent state. I legally recorded conversations. I played 30 seconds of Wednesday night, Nelson's voice explaining how an APS conservatorship could help them contest the trust. Gloria's expression hardened with each word. They explicitly planned to use adult protective services to gain financial control? While claiming concern for my welfare, yes. She took extensive notes, photographed some documents. Finally, she stood. Mr. Wells, you are clearly competent. More organized than most people half your age, in fact. She called Nelson and Lula into the room. They came reluctantly, standing rather than sitting. I've completed my evaluation. Mr. Wells is fully capable and cognizant. But he's been confused, forgetting things constantly, Nelson protested. He just demonstrated perfect cognitive function. Gloria's voice had gone cold. Or you filed a false report, which is a serious matter. We were genuinely concerned, Lula tried. Concern doesn't usually involve planning to contest legal trusts. I heard the recording. Nelson's face went white. What recording? Of you discussing this exact strategy before filing. Mr. Wells has documented everything. He recorded us without permission? Lula's voice rose. Which is legal in Oregon, Gloria said firmly. Filing false APS reports is not. They waste resources and can constitute harassment. She handed me her card. My report will show no cause for concern. You have the right to file counter-complaints. You may also want to pursue civil remedies for the financial issues. After Gloria left, the house felt explosive. You recorded us? Lula's face was red. In our bedroom? In my house, using legal means permitted by Oregon law. Nelson tried anger. This is some kind of setup. Entrapment. Documentation. Not entrapment. I pulled out my phone again. Would you like to hear more? I have hours. I played another clip, their voices from Wednesday night. Nelson saying, if APS assigns a conservator, we can contest the trust. Their shock was almost comical. The social worker found me completely competent, I said quietly. She was less impressed by your motivations. I stood, faced them both. You filed a false complaint to gain control of assets you'd already stolen from. You documented your own conspiracy. We can explain everything, Nelson started. Save your explanations. I walked toward my study. You have choices to make. Make them soon. I closed the door behind me, leaving them standing in the wreckage of their own plan, with nothing left but decisions they should have made weeks ago. Saturday morning, the house felt like a tomb. I stayed in my study with the door closed, listening to the sounds of careful movement, footsteps retreating when mine approached, doors closing when I entered shared spaces. We moved through the house like ghosts avoiding each other. Around 11, a soft knock broke the silence. Come in. Lula entered alone, eyes swollen and red. Nelson hovered in the hallway behind her, visible through the half-open door. She sat across from my desk like a supplicant before a judge. Dad, please, can we really talk? Her voice broke immediately. We made mistakes. Maybe we got things wrong, but we're family. Doesn't that mean anything? I watched her cry without softening. Let the silence stretch until she filled it. We were worried about you. Maybe we went about it wrong, but the concern was real. She reached across the desk. I didn't take her hand. Can't we just start over? Forget all this. Remember when I was little and you always forgave me? Family? I let the word hang between us. Family doesn't steal $70,000. Family doesn't mock me in videos posted for strangers. Family doesn't file false reports trying to have me declared incompetent. But Dad? I raised my hand. I'm not finished. You have 72 hours to leave my house voluntarily. After that, I file formal eviction proceedings and criminal charges. Her face went white. You're evicting your own daughter? I'm evicting tenants who committed fraud. That's how the law sees it. I opened the folder on my desk. 72 hours, 3 days. Take your belongings, leave your keys. Where are we supposed to go? That's no longer my concern. You had 8 months rent-free. You should have savings. I paused. Oh, wait. You spent my money instead. She left crying. I returned to my papers. Sunday, I drove to the restaurant to give them space and to escape the suffocating atmosphere. While I worked through inventory reports, my phone rang 3 times. Victor checking in. Fourth attorney called to verify your evidence, he said on the 3rd call. They withdrew representation. Good. They're running out of options, Reuben. That's the point. I returned home early evening to find them in the living room, legal papers scattered across the coffee table. They'd been researching Oregon eviction law. Find anything useful? I asked from the doorway. Nelson looked up, jaw tight. This is vindictive. You're destroying your own family. No, you destroyed the family. I'm protecting what I built. I pulled an envelope from my jacket. Official 30-day eviction notice. Oregon law requires it. However, I'm offering an alternative. I set the envelope on the table. Leave voluntarily by Tuesday evening. Sign away any inheritance claims. In exchange, I don't file criminal charges. And if we don't sign, Nelson's voice was hard, 30-day eviction, police investigation, public trial. Your choice, but choose by Monday morning. Lula's voice was small. You'd really do that? To your own daughter? You already did worse to me. Later that evening, after a silent dinner eaten in separate rooms, Lula found me in the study, one final time. What if we pay it back? The money? Her voice was desperate, last hope clinging. Pay it back with what? You spent it. We could get jobs, make payments. Over how many years? 10? 20? I shook my head. No, that ship sailed when you lied to Adult Protective Services. But it's not just about money anymore. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You created a false narrative online. I pulled out my phone, opened the screenshot album. I have every Instagram post, every lie about my memory, every fake concern. I turned the screen toward her, scrolled slowly through 27 saved posts. You want to fight this? Fine. I'll make it all public. Every mutual friend, every business contact. Your choice. Leave quietly or leave infamous. Her face crumbled. She understood. Late that night, I lay in bed and heard their voices through the wall. Not monitoring anymore, just audible through old construction. We don't have a choice. Nelson's voice defeated. We sign. We leave. Start over somewhere else. Lula's sobbing was muffled but clear. How did this happen? How did we get here? Doesn't matter now. We need to pack. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not guilt. Just cold certainty that justice was being served, that consequences mattered, that sometimes the hardest choices are the necessary ones. Tomorrow they'd sign. Tuesday they'd leave. It would be over. Monday morning at 9, they knocked on my study door. Both dressed in street clothes, ready to leave after this final formality. The notary arrived minutes later, the same professional woman who'd witnessed the trust signing. Nelson signed first, his pen pressing hard against the paper. Lula's hand shook as she added her signature below his. The notary stamped each page with efficient finality, closed her logbook, and left with a professional nod. Silence filled the room after she departed. That's it? Lula's voice was hollow. We're just done? You have until 6 to vacate. We'll be gone before then. Nelson stood, touched Lula's arm. She started to speak, looking at me with something between anger and grief, but the words wouldn't form. She shook her head and followed him out. The door closed. I was alone with the signed documents that ended everything. The afternoon was the soundtrack of departure. Footsteps overhead, drawers sliding, boxes being taped shut. Around 2, I heard the rental truck arrive. Heavy furniture scraped across floors. I stayed in my study, working through restaurant paperwork, giving them space for what little dignity remained. Around 5:30, I went upstairs to my bedroom window. The truck sat in the driveway below, packed full. Nelson loaded the last box while Lula stood by the passenger door, staring back at the house with tears streaming down her face. He said something I couldn't hear. She climbed in. The truck pulled out. I watched until it turned the corner and disappeared. I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not sadness. Just emptiness where tension had lived for 2 weeks. Downstairs, I walked through the quiet house to their former bedroom. Empty except for 2 keys on the dresser, house key and mailbox key placed side by side. I picked them up, felt their weight, then closed the door. Tuesday morning, I woke to true silence, made a single cup of coffee instead of a pot, sat at the kitchen table in morning light with no voices from the other room, no careful choreography of avoidance. My phone chimed. Instagram notification. I searched for Nelson's account out of curiosity. User not found. He'd deleted everything. Couldn't face the exposure when people started asking questions about those concerned caregiver posts. I deleted my screenshots. Didn't need them anymore. At the restaurant, Diane noticed immediately. You look different. Do I? Lighter, like something lifted. She set an espresso on my desk. Whatever was weighing on you, It's resolved. Good. You've earned some peace. The day passed in blessed normalcy. Menu reviews, supplier calls, greeting regular customers who'd been coming for years. This was my life. The business I'd built from nothing. The thing they'd tried to take. Still mine. Still strong. After closing, I stayed behind while Diane finished paperwork. She brought me coffee before leaving, sat briefly. Everything okay, boss? I looked around the empty dining room. Tables I'd chosen, art I'd selected, reputation I'd built over 30 years. Yes, Diane, everything's very okay now. She smiled, squeezed my shoulder, left me alone. I sat at my corner table, the one where I planned menus and dreamed about expansion. The coffee cooled while I thought about the last 2 weeks. Not revenge, restoration. They'd tried to take what I'd built. I'd simply defended it. Used their own weapons against them, law, evidence, truth. I felt no guilt, no regret, just quiet satisfaction that justice worked when you documented everything and stayed 3 steps ahead. My phone lit up with my own email. To Portland Food Security Fund. Would like to schedule meeting to discuss Wells Family Trust and ways to maximize its benefit. I hit send. The trust had been a defensive tool. Now it could be something more. Help people who actually needed it. Better legacy than thieves deserved. I finished the coffee, turned off the lights, locked up. Drove home through Portland streets with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. The house was dark when I arrived, but not lonely. My space again, my peace. Tomorrow I'd meet with the charity director. Next week I'd review restaurant expansion plans Diane had been urging. The future was clear now, unencumbered by people who'd seen me as a resource to exploit, rather than a person to respect. I smiled, the first genuine one in 2 weeks. Not because I'd won some game, because I'd protected what mattered, because I'd stood my ground, because sometimes the best revenge isn't making them suffer. Sometimes it's simply not letting them take what you earned, not letting them win. That's enough. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.